Welcome to the Predictable Revenue Podcast, where sales leaders teach you what's working for them so you can build it yourself. Feeling ready to kick your sales into high gear? We're here to help. Check out our sales coaching and consulting services at predictablerevenue.com. Welcome back to the Predictable Revenue Podcast. I'm your host, Colin Stewart. Today, I'm joined by Michael Tuso. He's the Director of Revenue Performance at Chili Piper. And we're going to be talking about, we're actually going to get super tactical into some really awesome examples of how he writes emails, how he builds his cadences and overcomes objections, replies to emails. We got lots of stuff. We're going to be very hands-on. He's got a lot of things to show and tell. So we're going to have lots of screenshots. If you check in the show notes, we'll make sure we throw those up there. This also might be a good one to check us out on YouTube because he's going to screen share and we're going to walk through a bunch of stuff. With that being said, Michael, welcome to the show.
Yeah, excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Man, so we're in the middle of COVID and your team just had its best month ever. Talk to me about this magic that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. So our SDR team, we kind of evaluated our messaging just like everyone else. In the middle of this, we sort of experimented with different types of messaging. And we actually found that the messaging that we were using historically worked really well in the context and of everything that was going on. And what we ended up doing was really doubling down on targeting. And so through targeting non-affected industries or even industries that do well in maybe a more remote structure or some other theory for reaching out to them, we found that we were actually able to amplify previously used messaging. So in the first week or two, I think some of the SDRs on the team changed the messaging. I think a lot of people refer to it as maybe more empathetic messaging. We actually found, the results to actually focus on the business case through greater targeting of those non-affected industries to be hugely beneficial. And as a result, we had the best historical month for the SDR team that the company has ever had. Also through implementing new email coaching techniques, our account executive team and our account managers, so the whole revenue client-facing funnel, did really well as a whole, not just the sales development. And a lot of it had to do with the implementation of coaching and training in the specific context and around email specifically and what's going on there. And so, we did have a surprisingly good month in March and followed up by a really strong April and positioned to do it again in May as well. So we've been very fortunate there.
Talk to me about your philosophy on cadences and sequences and what they should look like.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing with sequences, there's a huge debate right now about, do you personalize? Do you spray and pray? Do you, the whole sort of spectrum, should each basically email be individually prescribed to that specific person, or do you just put people in cadences and let the tools take care of it themselves? We operate somewhere in the middle. So what we try to do is to have that first, we place a lot of emphasis on the first couple of emails. So I think that there's a lot of statistics out there about, it takes 18 touches or, it takes 8 to 11 touches. And depending on who you ask, it changes very frequently. We actually looked at it for our own organization, and it's really focused on the first 2 touches. We found that that's where we get like 80% of our opportunity. And the reasoning that we figured out is because it sets up a business reason for us reaching out to them in the context of like their world, but they also know that it doesn't look like a canned email. So it's sort of in this space of like personalized, but in the direction of the business case. So the way that we think about it is it's contextual and relevant to that specific company and business use case is how we think about it. In other words, the SDRs are not reaching out saying, I saw you went to XYZ university or things like that.
And so let's dive in on that first email, and maybe we can expand it afterwards to the second email because 80% of your business is coming there. But let's start with what does that first email of yours look like?
Yeah, so here's the first one. So we just take a screenshot of the web form here, and it's super simple. But that's where most of the results are coming from. We additionally have an ABM campaign that's a little bit more robust than this that we've deployed to be even more specific and show a more before and after of what it would look like with the tool and without. But during the March and April period, this is sort of the first message that we saw a lot of success with.
Gotcha. Next of you're getting to that sort of magical moment here with the screenshot. So this is, like if I'm listening, I'm like, he's just taking a screenshot of the website. That sounds lazy. But specifically, this is the thing that you do. This is the thing that you'd replace. And you're saying, hey, if I'm a marketer, a 60-80% lift in conversion is huge. Like I'm probably comped on that.
Yeah. I think sometimes like the visual component really helps. It doesn't always help if the messaging isn't good. And there's this thing that we call a spam filter. Just because you do a screenshot doesn't mean you're going to be able to do it well. And even if you replicated this email, it doesn't mean that your organization, it would necessarily work for you. The thing is that the whole thing has to be a coherent touch strategy that works for your company. And that takes a lot of experimentation. Now, we don't have a million cadences that we run where it's like super disorganized and things like that. We're very intentional about like, it should almost be like science-based, like you change, one variable at a time, you iterate over a long period of time and you have something really solid. So I think that figuring out the messaging and the process and how you invest in that is more critical than coming up with the messaging itself, because you come up with a message, everybody starts using it, it's stale. How do you reinvent yourself? Well, that comes from your process and how you did it to begin with.
Cool. And I love the fact that you're getting the whole team involved in the creation of what is arguably, the most important part in the process, which is that first touch. Because if the first touch fails, if you're not getting any traction off those first two, it doesn't matter how good your closers are. It doesn't matter how good, how efficient, your calls are. It's just a matter of you're not getting enough volume to feed the team. So in some ways, that first touch is the most important piece.
I want to talk about mindset for a second and how we try to get them in that mindset so that they don't do that. You don't want that knee-jerk reaction, yet you have all these sales gurus and leaders telling people, don't just pitch your product. That messaging is getting stale. And the reasoning is because the sales reps can't relate to the own messaging that they're sending out because they don't know like what it feels like. So I always do sort of like a role play mock scenario where it's like, okay, whether it's a call or an email, how would you feel if you experienced this? And then secondly, I constantly inundate them with every single message that I get. So I get prospected frequently. There was one time where I even openly put my email address on the internet just to kind of pulse check and see what was going on in the industry, but also kind of I wanted to see what some of the messaging was out there. I got hundreds of emails and I sent them all to my sales team. But I also was doing that regularly where I would send the emails that I get prospecting me to the sales team. And I always go, what do you think in the Slack channel? And this really beautiful discussion will happen. And what it does, it's so powerful because it puts them in the perspective of the buyer. Plus it gets them to think critically on what they would do differently in order to make it better. And now they have that emotional component that I want. I want them to feel what it's like to be the buyer. Now, when they go back to their own emails, they're like, okay, don't do that. Don't do this. Don't just lead with the product, because they don't have to think about it because they felt it. And so it bridges that gap automatically. And it's one of my absolute favorite tools. So then that brings me to the framework piece a little bit more. Now that I have them in the right mindset of like, hey, don't do this knee-jerk reaction that everybody else is doing. We create a very simple framework for how we want them to think about it. And the first thing is that instead of pitching, again, just the product, you want to get to the heart of the prospect's immediate concern. So if someone replies back to your email cadence, say it's an email or say it's an objection. What I'm finding is that the overwhelming majority of objections, especially through email, are smoke screens. And so the thing is that you need to do is decipher, is this a smoke screen or is this real? And so the way that we do that is through this simple framework, and it's get to the heart of their concern. You want to reframe the conversation, and then you want a compelling reason for them to take whatever your CTA is. And in my opinion, the CTA should not be, can we get on a 15-minute call? Like, you want it to be softer than that. So, so the point number one is like, get to the heart of their concern. Someone says they care about conversion rates. You don't want to come back talking about speed to lead. Someone says they need a marketing tool for X. You don't want to answer it with Y. And it sounds really simple, but very frequently that's what happens. And so you want to get exactly to what they're specifically talking about. And then that leads me to the second point, which is to then isolate that and reframe it into the conversation from the sort of vantage point that you want them to kind of look at it at. And then the last thing is and I'll give examples for all these so that it's concrete, but you want to provide a compelling reason for them to take whatever action it is that you want them to take. And I usually don't like for that to be, can we get on a 15-minute call? Like, soften that up a little bit, and I bet that you'll get a lot more result. Again, the purpose of the top of funnel especially is to get engagement. So that's how I think about a lot of that.
I just want to make sure people are listening to that. Like, this is amazing. The framework of like handling the replies. Step one, get to the heart of what the prospect is actually talking about. So it's that tactical empathy side of things to make sure that it's not just a smoke screen. They're not just like dismissing you. You're actually trying to get to the heart of it. Then you're reframing what they're saying in the context of, okay, this is what I think what they care about most. And then you're ending with a compelling reason as to why there should be a next step, not just, hey, I think there's a next step. Let's jump on a phone call.
There's a bunch of videos of Oprah doing it online too. She's so good at that.
Awesome. I'll try and track that down.
We put it on we used it in our sales training one time, and it was like super powerful. But where you just repeat the last couple of words someone says in the form of a question, and then they elaborate a ton on it. It's just super powerful. But I've never really talked about doing it through email until one of our SDRs came to me and said, I don't know what to do. This prospect said, we have this very like coaching culture, so we're always sharing everything that we get. And the SDR comes to me and said, I don't know what to do. Prospect says they're interested in more so the way I prospected her than the actual product itself. And I said, well, craft the email. You craft it, then I'll edit it when you send it back to me. And she said, haha, I don't want a demo right now, basically, but how you prospected me was really cool. Can you tell me how you did that? So he writes the email. I make a bunch of edits to it. He's like talking about the product and stuff. And I was like, let's just make this like 3 lines and super simple. So because she said, haha, I was joking around in the beginning, we mirrored her back and we said, literally, haha, I can't give away all my secrets. Just kidding. Happy to share. In exchange, could we at least show you how Chili Piper works? And then in the next sentence, we sort of tell her how to do it. And she books the opportunity and looks at the product there. So usually with examples like that are usually outside the norm, I would then like to inform, the AE, hey, this is what happened, give them a little bit of awareness so that they know how to open the call. And very frequently I'll have the AE make use of that white space in between their initial booking of the meeting and that time in between the AE actually does that first discovery call so that it humanizes them there as well. This is an example of where I definitely would have done that. So he books the meeting with her, suggests maybe times in a subsequent email after the interest has been gained. Don't lead with suggesting times or your calendar and stuff like that. Wait until the interest is gathered. Then intro the AE. The AE responds and sort of humanizes themselves, and it sort of it's an automatic bridge from the SDR to the AE. Over email. So that's a quick mirroring example and how we sort of make the process really fluid. So we did a study that, if you just send a calendar link versus suggesting times, that suggesting times is 13 times more powerful than just sending over your calendar link. It seems super minor, but it's with the results. We sort of anecdotally noticed it and decided to put some data around it. So that's what we've got. What I'm finding now, though, is that it's off-putting to assume that someone wants to book with you by including all that information up front. So what you want to really focus on is that soft CTA that I mentioned earlier. So get rid of the 15-minute ask. Get rid of you're just assuming they're going to book in your calendar. It's very off-putting, especially for like sensitive B2B marketers and salespeople. Maybe not quite as much, but especially on the marketing side, just what we prospect into. Go for the softer ask, get the interest, and then then use the power of the tool, suggest your times, and you have the instant meeting. So that's what I definitely recommend, and this our SDRs do too. I brought that into Chili Piper in the beginning, and it ended up being a mistake because it was too hard of an ask, but it has worked for me in other companies, and I know other people who are doing it successfully right now. And I think the messaging depends on your audience. For our audience, the softer CTA, like if I said that to someone that I have trained in the past, they would say, "Oh, you just trial closed me." Like there's a label for that. There's not really a label for reframing the conversation and having a compelling reason for your ask, because it's a framework and it allows you to have a more dynamic conversation with someone. So that's kind of the way I really evolved over the years and how my thinking has progressed. So that's kind of the way I think about it.
Very cool. Anecdotally, we've done some testing ourselves. We've got some Outbound Labs video where we actually did some specific split testing around going for over a cold email, cold email chain, going for a direct close versus going for a softer ask, and the softer ask won by a fairly significant margin.
Hey, congratulations of being the one of probably 200 emails I've gotten post or fundraising. Basically, we all know those emails, like you get a bunch of funding and everyone thinks you all of a sudden have money and they prospect you. So our SDR basically says, "Wow, I feel so honored. Not 50 million in the bank honored, but still extremely honored. LOL." The LOL mirrors the LOL in the person's initial email as well. And then he said, "It's great that we're connected." He answered the question that the person has as well. So it's just another like seemingly small thing, but like this person is like not thinking, "Oh, this is like another SDR at another company." And then his message back really reinforces that he's like a human being, like talking just like you and I are right now. But I don't want to just like say like, let's be more human. I think there's enough like vague rhetoric out there specifically. The thing that he's doing to be more human is first he starts with the disruptive message that I showed at the beginning that gets the response. Now he really reinforces that through kind of making a joke through an email, and then mirroring him as well. So it's not just being human. It's hard to have actionable insight into that, but it's like, what are the things that he's specifically doing to be successful? And then he pivots into talking about what the prospect specifically asked and cared about. So I think one of our SDRs, Tyler, does a really excellent job of this.
Yeah, it looks like a real conversation, not just somebody picking the right template. I mean, like, okay, let's do it. You're mirroring, you're matching the style, lowercase LOL. They didn't even include a period there. Interesting. Just out of curiosity, what was the first email? Did we cover that one? So is this a continuation, or was that just?
Yeah, it was the one that I shared at the beginning. So okay. He just responded to that. Yeah.
Gotcha.
If you don't trust your team to work remotely, you should have never hired them to begin with, period. And so it starts with trust and autonomy of your people. And then, people, I rarely meet people that don't want a badge of honor, that someone who doesn't want to do a good job without something being sort of wrong, or the role just not being a fit in and of itself. Like if the role is the right fit, you're going to want that badge of honor, and you're going to intrinsically want to do a good job. And that's irrespective of pay, that's irrespective of spiffs, that's irrespective of all these external things that we're always shooting for. And when you create this environment of like, okay, you do you, I'm going to give you the training and support and infrastructure that you need. And when you need me, let me know. very frequently, even despite the environment that we're in, I still see messaging like, I'm trying to control what they're doing. And it's like, don't control them, enable them to be, the best type, enable their performance to be optimal. And sometimes that is holding them accountable, but it's not telling them, oh, go do more calls and emails. It's really getting granular about what it is you're specifically asking. And then, I don't ask them how many calls and emails they're doing. I trust that they'll do a good job. And they do. I mean, that's why they're exceeding their numbers right now.
Totally. And I think that's one of the benefits of being on a sales team or on in a team where your metrics and the performance is very visible, and it's really the only thing that matters. Anecdotally, we've had a bit of a culture like that. I can't say it was perfect, but we took 55 people remote in a 1 week period. We said, okay, we gave them notice on Monday or on Wednesday saying next week. This was like beginning of March. I think it was like first week of March, second week of March. We were pretty early.
Wow.
Said like starting Monday, everybody's working remotely.
Cool.
And the only problem relating to people's working hours that we've had to address is people actually working more.
Exactly.
Which is the exact opposite of what I thought. I was like, they're at home with their PlayStations. They're just going to sit and play computer games and watch YouTube and this and this and that. And we've actually had to have some serious conversations about setting boundaries.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of it as well. I suddenly don't have a commute anymore, so I'm not exercising as much because I used to use my commute to run or cycle or whatnot, and find my day just expanded 2 hours. So it's the exact opposite of what I sort of feared would happen. I didn't fear that it would happen, but I think in general, in the past, when I was thinking about a remote work culture, I had those same thoughts, concerns. How do we know people are doing their jobs? And it's not really a legitimate concern, because how do you know people are doing their jobs and they work in an office? It's like you can't see them actually producing. You can see them typing. You can see them sitting there, but that's not really what's creating the value.
Exactly. And it's like the how part. And I think that people figured out the what part a long time ago, and they're like holding on to that. Now it's coming down to execution, messaging, targeting. It's becoming almost like more science-based and less like gut check. And so I think that those leaders who are struggling and, write me messages on LinkedIn that are still kind of really far behind are the ones that are still kind of managing to that what. I mean, I definitely can relate to that too with the work-life balance thing, and have always worked in an office until this company. But if you think about it, we give college students more autonomy than we do grown adults. I mean, if you really think about it, is your teacher sitting there watching you write your paper after he or she assigns it? Like, no. I am naturally gravitate to working too much. I always have since I was younger. So one of the things that I've done to kind of be proactive about not doing that is I bookend my days with walks, listening to an ebook. And when I leave the house and listen to an ebook for like 45 minutes, come back home, I learned something, got some exercise. And when I'm back home, I'm at work. And then I leave again at the end of the day, go on a 45-minute walk. I read or I listen to an hour and a half of a book per day. When I come back home, I'm at home, and now I kind of act like I'm at home again. And it's been super effective for me to stay focused and mitigate distractions, but also so that I could be productive at that time, but also not let work spill over to when I'm like having like family dinner and stuff like that, or trying to do laundry or something. So that's the way like I've structured it. I think I've heard a lot of really cool examples, but that seems to be the one that works best for me.
Yeah, great having you on the show, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to staying in touch.
Sounds great.
Hey, bye-bye.
See ya.